Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, April 23rd, and this is today's Panda Pondering. If you see me a little hot, it is because, once again, I am in my home without AC, and so for the purposes of recording, I do not have my fan on, but also you notice it's a little darker because I don't have my light on either. So please bear with me. Today, we're going to talk about oil prices. So you probably have heard about crude oil prices falling below or going negative. Basically, the idea is that it went almost as low as negative $40 per barrel, which is almost as if people were asking or paying you to buy barrels of oil. So first of all, how did this happen? I want to go through a couple of things first. First of all, OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, they're the main influencer of prices, and it's made up of 13 countries. The 13 countries are Algeria, Angola, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. And they had originally vowed to keep prices of oil above $100 a barrel for the foreseeable future. But in mid 2014, the prices of oil began to fall rapidly, fell down to about $50 a barrel, and they've been kind of operating around $50, $60 ever since then. So why was this? Well, mostly because OPEC refused to cut production. And they hadn't seen that the oil demand in Europe and China both were decreasing at the same time, and there was a constant, steady production of oil from OPEC countries, and they wouldn't relinquish that oil. Why? Well, there's an important factor, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. So that's the first, is OPEC sets the prices. But second is, when we're talking about oil prices falling below zero for the first time, we're not talking about the oil barrel prices specifically. We're really talking about oil futures, so how they're traded. An oil future contract is a binding agreement that gives a buyer the right to buy a barrel of oil at a set price in the future. The contract puts the buyer and seller of the oil into a required completion of transaction on a specific date before the future dates arrive. So traders buying oil futures now, for instance, aren't buying oil barrels for today. They're buying for delivery that would occur in like June. And during this time, more than 150,000 of these future contracts were traded, and that created a negative valuation. Now, why? Because here's the thing. You understand supply and demand, right? Well, what occurred was a crazy couple of events happened that shocked both the demand and the supply chains at the same time. So travel was shut down around the world because of COVID-19. The impact to the demand was that global demand reduced by over 33%. And at the same time, there was a price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia walked out on a production cut agreement. So now there was an extreme excess supply of discounted oil because Russia wouldn't reduce their amount of oil that they were producing. So what happens to all this oil, specifically in the United States? Well, fun fact, did you know that if you happen to be an oil trader and you're unable to sell your contract of oil to someone who can store it, you must take delivery of the physical oil yourself at a specific delivery place and specific delivery place. That place, if you're in the United States, is in Cushing, Oklahoma. So in Cushing, Oklahoma, they have 15 storage terminals that can hold up to 90 million barrels of oil. That comprises of over 13% of the total U.S. storage. Add that 13% to their pipeline network, which also carries over 6.5 million barrels each day. So what's the issue? The problem is that space is full. They are at capacity. So we have a historic amount of oil that's being stored in our terminals. But also another thing is we have a historic amount of oil that's being stored in tankers at sea. So tanker ships at sea. There's about 160 million barrels that are stuck on tankers at sea. Now, because of this, renting a tanker has gone up 10 times. So what used to be like $20,000 a day to rent a tanker is now upwards to $300,000 a day. And that means there's a glut of people trying to sell off their oil. That's why I went to a negative evaluation. So it's April, I know, but in March, we have over 76% of the world's available oil storage capacity full. Done. So what does this mean? So first of all, from a political standpoint, you need to know that oil is a geopolitical game. Big price swings always come with geopolitical undercurrent. So first, some of this will go away after elections. There are some political motivations that are affecting this, but it's not just us, but it's around the world as well. Two, the federal government is currently negotiating with companies to store crude oil in strategic petroleum reserve. If all the storage tanks are full, oil companies will shut down wells, which can damage the oil fields, which would be bad. Next, also OPEC is also politically and financially driven. So the more oil they produce, the more they can sell. The more they can sell, the more they're politically relevant. So even though they were urged very early on to cut oil production, they failed to do so at an appropriate rate to avoid this collapse because they were worried about their political capital. So for you, how does this affect you? Well, first of all, you're already seeing fuel prices go down at the pumps in your local areas. The average price in the US for a gallon of regular gasoline fell from about $2.50 a year ago to currently about $1.49. So $2.50 a year ago to now $1.49. The problem is you can't take very good advantage of this because you're not driving that much because we're all in this stay-at-home order situation. So it's really a no-win situation all around. Now, how will it affect us in the future? Well, first of all, you have to know oil prices won't stay that way. You can already see an upturn in the oil futures prices. It will rebound quickly. The concern is if the rebound will be so overdone that it will spike prices in the near future. Also, many frackers and oil shaling companies could likely file for bankruptcy because once the rebalancing finalizes, we could see fewer producers of crude oil, which would again spike the prices. And the impact economically has to be watched carefully because in light of potential and probable economic recession, given the way that things are going, oil has a very significant impact or correlation to our finances. This interconnectedness, for instance, you might see like a significant impact with our interest rate because related connections to oil and interest rate are there. It's a little bit less of a direct impact, but you will see it when people tend to have lower oil prices then lower interest rates, then oil prices will rise because more people are traveling and buying and doing things that would require oil, like production and manufacturing would increase. When interest rates are high, people are saving their money, they're not doing much, and so oil prices will go down. So all of this has a huge economic impact of the future, and you guys should know about this because it is important for you to understand how this one small thing of oil really kind of is connected to all the things that we are involved in. So this is part of the pondering. It's like, hey, have you ever thought that something we take for face value like oil could be so complicated and interconnected to everything? And I want you to think about this. If that's about oil, think about human life. We always say that human life is worth much more than anything out there. And this is true. And that's true for this statement as well. If oil is so interconnected that it affects all these other things, imagine how you are, how interconnected you are to the people around you, how much your life has impacted those of your family, your friends, your acquaintance, those who are in areas of interaction with your life, of contact with your life. And just imagine, there's a lot of times people are thinking, hey, does my life even matter? Well, it does, because when you're gone and when something happens, there's gaps that are missing, there's effects that are occurring that you may not realize. And so an example of oil and how we're doing things now, I hope can show you how important we all are and how we are all interconnected. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Bye.